Happy Monday, everybody. All right, this week I'm going to start a series on a new congressional act that just passed through Congress and was signed into law by President Trump. It's called the Genius Act, which I'm going to go high level here. It's basically a new cryptocurrency act where the United States is now getting involved in cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency has been fought by some members of Congress. Elizabeth Warren has fought to make cryptocurrency illegal. There's been some bickering in Congress across the United States. We've got fans, we've got clients who love cryptocurrency, we've got people who don't trust it. Well, now the Genius Act is legitimizing cryptocurrency, which is a digital currency using blockchain technology. Now, I'm not going to go into the weeds of that. Um, this follows on the heels of the Big Beautiful Bill, which we talked about in a prior video. And, that's been getting all the press. But I actually think that the Genius Act is actually a bigger deal for currency, money, the United States, fiscal health than the Big Beautiful Bill. And as you know, I don't think the Big Beautiful Bill is beautiful. I think it's pretty darn good, but not beautiful, mostly because of its debt, the debt increase. All right, so there's a lot of nuance, and the Genius Act can get kind of techie. So before we go there, I want to lay some groundwork and show you that history repeats itself. And as you know, Greg and I are history buffs, and we can't stop but pay attention to the cycles of history and how maybe it doesn't always repeat itself, but it rhymes. So I'm going to go back to 1863, where there was a very similar act that passed through Congress for the same reasons. And by understanding this framework, I think this will lay a good foundation that we can then go into the nuance of the Genius Act. But in 1863, the United States was in the middle of the Civil War. Congress passed the Banking Act, which was a big step for standardization of currencies because banks were creating their own currency. They were issuing them, but there would be volatility in those bills and those notes and collapses, financial collapses of banks, and then that would lead to panics. Well, that gave the United States government a legitimate reason to step in and say we need to standardize everything. So banks, you can go ahead and issue your currency, but you must back your currency by purchasing US treasuries, by purchasing debt. So the currencies that you issue, the banknotes that you issue, are going to be backed by US debt. Well, that made the consumers happy because then they knew if they went to a bank and got a banknote that it was relatively stable, and you didn't see the great fluctuations. But what that did for the United States government, which was the bigger deal, is that it created a captive market of purchasers of United States debt. And the federal government needed purchasers of their debt because they were in the middle of a war that meant the future of our country. And so they were going into massive debt that the southern states couldn't compete with. And it was to wage war on the South, eventually bringing the war to an end, but starting this tradition of federal power, federal authority, all based on purchasing debt. Now, that was 1863. Now let's fast forward to 2025. We've got very similar things at play. Cryptocurrency has been around for about 20 years now, but only in real popularity in the last 10 and especially the last 5 years. The biggest cryptocurrency on the block is Bitcoin, but there's others. There's Ethereum, there's Solaris, there's um, Dogecoin. Actually, here's the thing. While there is a limited number of Bitcoins out there, only 21 million ever going to be produced, which is what some advocates say gives its value, there is an unlimited number of potential cryptocurrencies out there because anybody could create one. If you know how to program, you can create your own cryptocurrency. Well, that has created a massive amount of volatility. Now, Greg and I, we see the value of the blockchain cryptocurrency in its utility. You can buy and sell with digital currency. That if you agree on the price of the currency, you could make a transaction just like you can with cash, and it's done. It's a little more efficient actually than the current modern banking system, where that basically relies on a ledger system. Well, the speculation in cryptocurrencies has been what's made it popular, not the utility. So there have been people who have bought it expecting to get rich. Well, now that's potentially starting to create a competitor with the US dollar. And we all know the US government can't allow that to happen. In comes the Genius Act. All right, I'm going to stop there. We'll pick up from there next week. Till then, you all have a great week. Like and subscribe. Bye bye.